Hello everybody, I'm glad you're here today. Today is July 23rd, 2025. In this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of different things that maybe will help you and also just give you some information on observations going on in the world, all right? So, I'm going to talk about what countries are preparing for war in Europe. I'm going to talk about a dream that my friend had. She lives across the street from me. She told me about it. You'll find it interesting and encouraging. I do believe it is from God. She is a believer. I'm going to read from my journal. I'm going to read from the Bible. So we got a lot to do today. So here we go. Let's hang on, everybody. So first and foremost, I want to talk about something Taylor and I, my daughter and I, have been doing in the evenings. We've been rewatching 1940s House. Now then, she was watching it and she's like, Mom, I don't remember this. So she's like, I know she's seen it, but she said, like, I don't think I've watched this since I've been an adult. So, I mean, that's okay. Okay. So we're watching it now, right? It's a reality show made in 2000, and it is a fascinating simulation. They place a modern day family in 1940s in England, in London, or in where the Blitz was. And I mean, well, I don't think it's London proper, but like one of those towns anyway, around there. So anyway, interesting observation there. Like I say, it's in 2000. It was done in 2000s. There is an innocence that was there when filmed. These people, they had not gone through what we've all gone through now. So we are a little more hardened now and jaded as a society, I think. But they were just, it's such a delightful show. And it is a learning. There's a lot to take notes about just surviving war that's right on top of you. So that's been interesting. One of the things they do is they show the caves in London or in that area where people actually set up a community down there during the war where they lived. I think it said 15,000 people. Now, I don't know if that was at one time or over the course of the years of the war, but they're shelters. They're like bomb shelters is what they are. So, except they actually lived there because their homes had been destroyed. Fascinating to go look at that and see that and walk through that with the cameras. And I leaned over to Taylor and I said, you know what the irony is? These bomb shelters that these people stayed in during the Blitz and during the war years, how many NATO countries are preparing their shelters, their air raid shelters? I don't want to use that word, the B-O-M-B word, too much because YouTube doesn't like me to do that. But so I'll just say air raid shelters. There are many, many NATO countries at this minute preparing shelters for their civilians to flock to when they get attacked by Russia. And they're flat out saying that because we are expecting that we are on a wartime footing. That is what they're saying. And so I looked up, I Googled, I thought, okay, I know I've been hearing about this, but let's see if it's, and absolutely it brought up Poland, the Netherlands, Finland, UK, France. There's several other countries. Germany was one. In fact, Germany announced a couple of weeks ago that their hospitals are absolutely on full-time wartime training for mass casualty events in the event of an attack from Russia. Flat out. Not just this vague, oh, if there's a mass casualty event. No. It's actually like naming the event. So that is where we're at now. And to see what that was in the 1940s and then to see what we're doing now is chilling and sobering. So that was kind of my takeaway. That was something I just shared with you. I thought I'm going to share that on the channel because I think people like, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? And does that affect you the same way it's affecting me? Like, wow, we're just doing it again, y'all. But I don't think it'll be the same. It's not going to, well, I don't think it ain't going to be the same. It's not the same. So, anyway, interesting thing. Now, let me move to my friend's dream, okay? This person of mine, this friend of mine, this person, she's a neighbor and we're friends. I've known her parents. She's a little older than me. I've known her parents forever. She's come back to take care of her parents, which is much our culture here. So she was telling me a dream that she had, and this is she told me another at the same visit. We were visiting the other day. She told me two dreams. One is very personal. I don't feel like I can tell you, but it's definitely from God. And it was a way that God showed her how to deal with the loss of her husband. Her husband was in a very horrible accident and died many years ago. But still, it doesn't matter how many years ago. The pain is still raw, right? So anyway, she was telling me about this dream that God gave her that gave her a lot of comfort. And then she said, I had another dream. This woman, she said, these friends of mine that I dreamed about, this woman died many years ago, and the man just died 3 weeks ago, and her husband, this woman's husband, died just 3 weeks ago. So she's like, I was remembering this dream I had, and I said, well, what was it? She said, well, we were such good friends. She said I was such a good friend of this couple, and the woman's name was Jane. All right. So Jane had died many years ago, but she said, just the other night I had this dream. And I said, well, what was it? She said, I dreamt that I was standing in front of a grain elevator. Now, if you don't know what a grain elevator looks like, y'all just Google it. We have massive grain elevators here where I live. They are huge. They are the biggest structures on the landscape. You can see them for miles. So she said I was standing in front of this grain elevator, and all of a sudden the door opened and Jane came out. Now, Jane's been dead for a long time, decades. Okay, decades. Jane walked out, and my neighbor said, well, Jane, how are you? And Jane said, you are going to love heaven. It is beyond anything you can even imagine. It is wonderful. You are going to love it. And my neighbor friend said, well, are there a lot of people there? Is it crowded? And she said, I don't even know why I asked that in my dream, but you know how dreams are. She said, in my dream, I asked Jane, is it crowded? Is heaven crowded? And Jane started laughing. She said, not as crowded as I wish it were. And then that was the end of the dream. Well, I know that's just a blip of a dream, y'all, but somehow or another, people talk to me about dreams. This neighbor doesn't know I have this channel. I think it'd freak her out if she did. But she doesn't even for sure 100% believe that God works through dreams, although she kind of does. Or else I don't think she would have been telling me about it. But this dream, I was packed with encouragement. I'm going to tell her about it later, but I'm telling y'all about it first. First of all, I find it interesting when you interpret this dream. First of all, the name Jane, I wrote it down, Jane means God is gracious. Okay, so God is gracious, comes walking out the door. Okay, and it is at a grain elevator. Y'all, now I'm just going to talk real plain about, I live in an agricultural area, and grain elevators are truly a big part of our culture and our economic survival here. So the grain elevators are where you store grain, all right, and then you store it until you sell it, or it's just that kind of thing. So I find it interesting because when she told me about that, the words Lord of the Harvest came into mind. You don't put stuff in the grain elevator unless you're harvesting, okay? Isn't that cool? And Jesus uses so many parables and illustrations about farming and about harvesting and planting, because the people understood that. We understand that if you live in the city, I'm sure you understand the general concept. You may be an expert, I don't know, but the idea of harvest is a huge thing in Jesus is teaching. He says the harvest is ready, the workers are few. Pray that there'll be more workers, all right? So in other words, the parallel is souls. The grain is souls, and they're ready to be harvested for Christ. And the thing about harvest time for us, for me, is the best, my favorite time of the year around here. It's such there Planting is a cool time in the spring. There's a lot of optimism, but harvest is the culmination of all the hard work of the summer, and there's a sense of there's relief coming once the harvest is finished. Once they get everything out of the field, um, then they're done for the winter. Whew, you can shut it down, you can rest. So when harvest is over, you work like a dog when your harvest is going on. I mean, like, if we don't have people at church during that time, and you're like, well, they should come to church. Yes, they should. And some do just shut down the operation and come to church for an hour and then go back and work. There are many farmers that come to church in their diesel stained, dirty old work clothes to worship, and then go back and they sit by themselves because this diesel is so strong on their clothes sometimes. But I mean, yes, that's who we are where I live, and farming and harvest is one of the most exciting it is, to me, it's the most exciting time of the year. I love watching the combines. Of course, that's kind of earlier in the summer, like in June when they're cutting wheat. But when they're cutting corn or when they're stripping cotton, it is really fun to watch those big machines just move through the fields. And when it's cotton, they run at night, so because they have these big headlights, and they on these strippers, and they actually, they look like bugs going through, like giant bugs going through the field. If you're looking from the road or from your house or whatever, you can see them moving through the fields, lit up at night, and it's dark. It's so, the wonderful thing about harvest, what I'm saying is, Jesus parallels that to his coming back to get us, to us actually working as the farmers in the field, doing his will, doing his work, doing what he wants us to do. So I was drawn to this morning when I was worshiping. I was asking Jesus, I was like, okay, I've got this dream about Jane, and it means God is gracious, the harvest, the grain elevator, all of these beautiful images. God, I said, what passage, where is that in the Bible? And like the Lord just gave, of course, the harvest is ready, that one. But then he said, why don't you look in Matthew chapter 13, verse 24? And I mean, it wasn't that specific, but it was like this. I went to this passage. And it says this is Jesus talking. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who planted good seed in his field. But that night, as the workers slept, his enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat, then slipped away. When the crop began to grow and produce grain, the weeds also grew. The farmer's workers went to him and said, Sir, the field where you planted was good seed. It's full of weeds. Where did they come from? An enemy has done this, the farmer exclaimed. Should we pull out the weeds? They asked. No, he replied. You'll uproot the wheat if you do. Let them both grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort out the weeds, tie them into bundles, and burn them, and to put the wheat in the barn, or the grain elevator. So later, Jesus explains that parable, and basically, it's true. It's true. I when I have grown a garden and I've grown corn, sometimes you get a big weeds in there, and if you pull up the weeds, you're gonna yank up the corn because the roots are so entangled with each other, or so close together, and it'll mess everything up. So you harvest, and then you pull it both up, and you burn what doesn't belong. The weeds are people, are the enemies, and they are among us, and we are the wheat, y'all. And we are side by side with the enemy right now, but there'll be a day when that's sorted out, and we will go to heaven, and the people who are of the enemy will go to hell. That's how it works. So I love the picture of the farming and the harvest. The thing when you plant a seed in the ground, y'all, it has to die in order to grow a plant. The seed dies. And I think the analogy is there. I mean, that's what Jesus, who created the seed and everything, all of this, the way it all works. Jesus is saying, you have to die to yourself, your old self, in order for me to renew you. When we come to Jesus and he recreates us, it is the exact picture of a plant. We are the seed. We die. Our old self dies. But the new grows into a plant and then produces more seed than the one that we began with. Because you plant a little kernel of corn, like you think of popcorn, y'all. You plant that little kernel of corn in a hole, and it or three of them in a hole, three little kernels, and when it grows, you got an ear of corn. Think of that ear of corn. When you eat corn on the cob, you're eating all those. I mean, they're not dried out yet, but you're eating a potential field of corn is what you're eating off that cob. All that one seed produced all of those kernels times two, because usually a stalk will produce 2 ears of corn or so. So that is the analogy Jesus put before us, because he thought these people can understand this. My sheep can understand this. And it's hard to grow side by side with the weeds. That ain't fun. Weeds are itchy. They sting. They're not fun. It's not pleasant. But we know the day is coming. We know the day is coming where he'll separate us from the weeds. And even he goes on to say that. I mean, later on, just in verse 40, Jesus says, and just as the weeds are sorted out and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the world. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will remove from his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. Those are the weeds. And the angels will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun, S-U-N, in their Father's kingdom. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. So you got to choose, y'all. Are you a wheat or are you a weed? I mean, you got to figure that out. If you don't belong to Jesus Christ and have given yourself to him, he is the Son of God. And he's coming back to get us one of these days, and we have to be ready for that. And so I'm not going to go into all that. I'm just going to go right to my journal. So this is an encouragement. I wrote this. This is from March 14th, 2025. I don't think I've read this to y'all. I wrote this right after that huge, massive dust storm we had that killed a couple of people right up the road from me, and it knocked my electricity out. It was horrible. Here's what I wrote down on that day, March 14th, 2025. And I think you'll find this encouraging. I am the light of the world. In me there is no darkness. Child, let me remind you again. Do not lean on your own understanding. Lean on me. For I see beyond the limitation of men's sight. A wise man prepares for what lies ahead, be it hardship, change, or death. The wise ready themselves in me, anchored firmly for high winds, high waves, high tide, high danger. I am the place of safety. This day, my child, as the winds howl around you, know you are in my shelter, and as the world around you blows as destructively as the windstorm today, know this, the damage will be brutal. The sounds of the blows will wail loudly, howling a constant howl outside yourself. This is the sound of death from the enemy. But I say to you, look around and see your cocoon of peace and safety, for I have mighty protection. I have mighty protection for you, my lambs. No storm of the enemy will destroy them, for their hope and strength are in me. Do not let the howling winds of war discourage you, my little one. Preach on the quietness of my peace in my salvation. And that's what the Lord wrote to me while I was worshiping. If you pray about that and decide what to do with it through the Holy Spirit, whether you should take something, glean from that, or walk away from it, that's up to you. I'm just reading it to you as personal. It's my personal journal I'm bringing to you. So we have peace in Jesus, no matter what's going on, no matter if we're going to end up in an air raid shelter, or if we're going to be out farming and working souls out in the fields, or if we're going to be near to death and be harvested by Jesus and taken up into the great grain elevator in the sky, right? So I'm saying, just hang on to these thoughts today, y'all. The the war is here. War is coming. If it's not just busting in your glass windows right now, I don't know when, but it is intensifying. So let's not get discouraged. Let's just get about the work of the Lord. Let's get out in the field. Do what you need to do out there. And try not to get stuck by a weed, right? All right. I'm going to leave that with y'all. Things are good. Just remember that. In the Lord, things are good. You're going to make it. I'm going to make it. Endure to the end, right? All right. Stay safe, America. From the pantry, this is Gina Lima Charlie. I'm out.